here are some stories that I want to share with you all. There's a total of 3. The first one I heard from a friend of mine, and it takes place in South Minneapolis. This involves his 2 cousins, and I'll refer to them as cousin Aaron and Brian, and both are brothers. Aaron is the older one. Well, one night Brian happened to be alone that night as his family had all stepped out to their relatives. He did his own little thing for a while and started to feel tired, so he went to his room and decided to sleep. As soon as he was able to knock out, he heard footsteps outside of his door and figured it wasn't anything, so he just dozed off to sleep. A little bit later, he wakes up to loud noises inside of his house, figuring that his family must have came home. Well, he decided to go and check it out as he was making his way up the stairs from the basement, and he could tell that the noise was coming from the living room. Brian goes to check out the noise and he sees a lady standing there, looking around and messing with stuff. The lady turns around and stares right at him. Brian was paralyzed at this point, standing there, and the lady continued to stare at him, and she made her way walking towards him. At this point, he was confused and wondered why he couldn't move. Just as the lady got closer to him, he heard the doorknob to the back door open, which broke the trance that the lady had over him. Brian broke from the trance and turned around, heading towards the back door and kitchen, which was being opened by Aaron, his older brother, who happened to be coming home. Well, as Aaron came inside, Brian passed right by him, running as fast as he could outside. His older brother asked him what was wrong, but by then it was too late, as Brian was outside the door and Aaron turned around to the living room to see what the heck was happening as to why his little brother was so scared running out of the house. Aaron turned to see the lady in front of him, by which it was too late. She grabbed him by the bear hug style and kissed him. Ugh! Aaron was taken by surprise by the bunso, and somehow he broke free of the shock and slammed the ghost down to the floor and bolted out of the door after his little brother were both able to get to their brothers. Anyways, they got to their uncle's house, which was about half a block down the street. Aaron later told my friend that when he was kissed by the ghost, he could feel her long tongue in his mouth, just moving all over the place, and that she had long fingers and hair. That's nasty. Alright, anyways, this is story number 2. It's the same friend, except he's older and married and has a kid. It takes place in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. My friend sleeps down in the basement, and as people in Brooklyn Park know, the basements have another living room area and bathroom and bedrooms. Well, his room didn't have a door at the time and only a curtain. One night, as he was sleeping, he turned to where the door was, and from under the curtains, he could see something crawling on the ground. At this point, my friend was already paralyzed, and all he could do was watch the thing as it crawled on its hands, dragging its body. Kind of like in the movie how the Grudge lady would do, hence why we refer to this ghost as the Grudge. Anyways, the thing crawled and crept up and pulled itself onto his bed, and that's when it sat on him. This happened for quite a few times, and every time it was the same. It would crawl under the curtain and pull itself up to the bed and sit on my friend. Well, he decided to actually go and get himself a door, which were the sliding ones, kind of like the closet door. That night, he had a feeling that it would return, so he tied the knobs with a string and went to sleep. He awoke to the noise at his door and swore he could see the thing reach up and try to open the door. The thing, or whatever it was, kept at it for a while, and then it just stopped. I'm guessing at this point the ghost couldn't open it since it was tied and it was used to crawling under the sheets. He told me that ever since he put that door, it doesn't bother him anymore. A bunch of friends and I all agreed that since before he didn't have a door and only a curtain, it was basically a sign of open invitation. We refer to this thing as the Grudge whenever we mention this ghost story. I'm not sure if he told his parents since I never really cared to ask. The third and final story happened to my sister and I when we were little kids and my family had just settled in the US for a few years. I was around 4 to 5 years old and my sister was 2 to 3. This takes place in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. My grandma used to babysit us until my uncle moved to Minnesota and had kids, so she went up there to go babysit his kids. One day, my 2 older brothers and my older sister went to school, so we decided to go up to their beds and jump on them. Well, in the room, they have this closet that doesn't have a door, just like a walk-in closet. So my sister and I were jumping on the beds opposite from the side of the closet when we see this granny with long black hair and long fingernails emerge from the closet. The two of us got scared and wondered why Grandma was in the closet, but then remembered that Grandma left us to babysit Uncle's kids. Well, being scared, I told my sister to hide under the blankets while I go grab my dad. I ran out the door and slid down the steps and told my dad. We both were going back, and as soon as we hit the bottom steps, my little sister was already sprinting down the staircase. My dad told us to wait while my dad goes and checks it out. He does and returns and doesn't say anything to us. At this point, I forget what happened, as this was long ago, but my sister and I have never forgotten that experience. I sometimes ask my sister what happened after I left the room, and she said that she peeked from under the blankets and the lady was standing on the bed just moving back and forth, looking around, and then it started heading towards my sister, and that's when she got up and sprinted out of the room. I think about this sometimes and wonder if she ever came out while my other two brothers and sisters were sleeping in that room, but I figured, oh well. I have some stories from my family. My cousin used to live in California and was a big-time runaway. He did drugs and never came home. Well, he told me that one night, he and his homeboys ended up in the countryside in an old abandoned house. They partied there, smoked, and drank some beer. Then they got tired and decided to sleep there for the night. All of them slept on the floor on their backs. Now, when you sleep on your back, your toes are pointed up towards the ceiling. Anyways, later on, during the early morning hours, the guys that were sleeping on their back felt somebody knocking on their toe of their shoes. Knock, knock, knock. Needless to say, they took off running and never went back there ever again. Here's another one told to me by my aunt. Back in the mid-90s, my aunt's daughter was involved in a lot of beauty pageants. After winning the one in Wisconsin, she was sent to California to compete in another competition. Well, she ended up winning the one in Cali too. After her win, it was late at night already. They packed up and left the pageant and headed back to their hotel. They had to drive down this long, winding road to get back. It was a very foggy and rainy night, and since they didn't really know where they were going, they ended up driving on a road that went by a cemetery. Everybody else was dead tired and sleeping, but my aunt happened to look outside and she saw a woman dressed in traditional Hmong clothes with her head bowed down, sitting at the side of the road. Here's the third and last one. One of my cousins owns a duplex and lives on one side. He's always renting out the vacant side, but people would move in there, stay for less than 6 months, and move right back out. We never really knew why until my brother passed away. After that, my sister-in-law moved from the farm where they used to live in into the vacant side of the duplex. Strange things started to happen. Her daughters would see dark shadows that would stare at them and then vanish when they turned to look. Something would yank their blankets off in the middle of the night. One night when my sister-in-law was sleeping, she felt this presence. It pressed its face right against her cheek and then to the other side. In the early morning hours, she would hear a voice talking to a big tree outside in the backyard. One day, she went to a Hmong psychic to get her fortune read. The psychic told her that she didn't live alone in that house and that there was another person living in there besides her and her daughters. She said that it was best that she didn't live there for too long. This person was supposed to be an old white lady who had passed away in there. Anyways, my sister-in-law says that if they're quiet, then usually nothing happens. But if they get loud and noisy and messy, then they start seeing the thing. My sister-in-law's family is very messy and loud, so I guess that is why the presence likes peace and quiet and neatness. I heard these weird sounds a couple of different times when I first moved back to California. Similar to what you'd hear when you see those alien UFOs in old movies. It usually would be around 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. One time, I heard it, and whatever it was making the sound was petting one of my roosters that I used to coop up by my window. I told my siblings about it and they told me to stop tweaking. I told a friend of mine that used to live down the street. Right when I mentioned it, he knew exactly what I was talking about. He said that when he was a kid, he looked out the window and saw something hideous, but he refused to mention to me what exactly he saw. A couple of my brother-in-laws have mentioned to me that they've seen things around our neighborhood during late at night, but they also didn't tell me exactly what they saw. In the city that I live in, there is an infamous highway called Highway 11. That highway is known for its ghosts and bad stuff happening on that stretch of road. Both sides of the highway are surrounded by swamps. My aunt came to America and her first job was doing labor for this seafood factory, like cracking oysters into jars or cracking crab for meat. Well, every weekday morning she would drive her and her coworkers to work. It was a foggy morning around this winter time. She drove on that highway and they all saw a taillight to a car. It was so foggy, so the best way to stay on the road is to follow the lights of the car in front of you. This taillight was taking my aunt for a joyride for a whole hour. That Highway 11 is only a 15-minute drive to the main interstate highway, so my aunt knew right away that she was being led by a ghost. So my aunt sped up and everyone in the car was screaming at her to slow down and to not hit that taillight. She drove right through that taillight and that's when she sees daylight. That story was not all that unusual. My aunt knew what to do because in Vietnam, many people have been led by some unknown forces of nature. Like I have said, they either take you to your deaths like waterholes or up in the jungles where you get tired and lost. Some were lucky to live and tell the tales of their experiences. Most did not and they ended up driving into a ditch or hit a tree. This is one of the scariest stories that I've been told. It may be different from what really happened. It goes like this. One night, a Hmong family just couldn't take it anymore. Their house was haunted, so they called the pastors from the surrounding cities and areas to come and pray for them and their house. Among the pastors was a younger and least experienced one. They prayed in all the rooms of the house, going from room to room praying. Then, as they walked down a hallway, they passed a closet. As they passed the closet, they heard a loud bang on the door, as if someone from inside was banging or knocking on the door. They decided they'd come back around to that closet in the hallway after praying in the other rooms. Finally, they made their way to the closet in the hallway and started praying. The younger and least experienced pastor heard the doorknob turn and the door slowly creak open. As that was happening, the atmosphere and the smell of the area changed. It smelled like an overwhelming, rotten stench. As they prayed, he opened his eyes to look. What he saw was an old lady, all cramped up in the top part of the closet with long black hair and a long tongue sticking out. A funeral was held this weekend. A young boy died. His name was Michael, but I don't really know him. My sister is a friend of his. This is what I heard from my father. If you know him or know the story, it might be different from the one that I've heard. Here's how it goes. Michael and his brother and some of their friends went out to a bar to drink. Late into the night, they were all going to head home, but Michael, who was their only ride, took off without any of the other boys. The stranded boys walked to their auntie's house, which took them approximately 2 hours. Later on, cops came knocking on their door to tell them that Michael had just passed away. He had pulled up on the opposite traffic lane and he parked his car, leaving the ignition on, and he must have fell asleep. They said his car was leaking oil and it must have ran dry for the car to catch on fire. He died from smoke inhalation and burns on the side of his face and hands. Later, his parents seeked out those Buddhas who can look into the cause of death, and they said that Michael was taken by the spirit of a girl. Prior to his death, he had went fishing and he heard someone following him from behind. After that, he would always dream of that ghost, and that ghost would sleep with him each night. Right before he died, the ghost told him that she will take him with her. So, the night that he passed away, he left all of his buddies behind because it wasn't their time and he went alone. When they did his funeral, the shamans forbid anyone who was born in the year of the ox to attend his funeral. They said that a demon was lingering in his funeral, and anyone that was born the year of the ox will be taken to the afterlife as well. Anywho, those who went to the front to go see him in his open casket had a red string tied onto their wrist. My sister asked why the red string was necessary, and my grandma told her that if your soul is weak, it helps protect you and from any demons or ghosts who will try to take your soul. Michael was a real nice guy. I heard he was a real hard worker and he died at such a young age. My blessings to his family and loved ones. This morning, I woke up at 7:30 a.m. and was too tired, so I decided to go back to sleep for another 5 minutes. As soon as I closed my eyes, I felt something heavy sit on me. I woke up in my dream still sleeping in my bed, and I clearly knew that I was dreaming. I wanted to wake up so bad because I needed to get ready for work. Plus, I'm afraid of seeing things that I wouldn't want to see in my dreams, so I tried to go back to sleep. I closed my eyes and opened my eyes again, but this time the room was very dark, so I know that I was still inside the dream. I went back to sleep again and woke up again, and I thought that I had woken up, but when I walked to the bathroom, the lights wouldn't turn on. So then I realized that I was still dreaming. I went back to the bedroom and saw a little boy standing at the foot of the bed looking at me. Somehow I wasn't scared and asked the little boy to sleep with me on the bed, and he did. When we were lying on the bed, the little boy laid facing me and just stared at me. I closed my eyes again and tried to wake up in real life. When I woke up again, the little boy was gone and the room was still very dark, so I am again still in my dream. I decided to call my boyfriend and see if he can call my phone in real life, since if I hear my phone ring, I'll wake up. When I called him, there was a lot of static and I could barely hear him. I asked him to call me and he asked me why, and I just told him to call my phone. As soon as I hung up, my boyfriend knocked on my door and woke me up. I was so scared, I asked him to walk with me to the bathroom so I could wash up and go to work. When I woke up, it was already 8 a.m., so I was late to work. Okay, this story was a little bit confusing, but basically she had a dream within a dream within a dream, and she thought that in that dream, if she called her boyfriend will call her back, and that will actually ring her real phone in the real world, which will wake her up. I mean, I guess it worked because her boyfriend knocked on her door, but yeah. There was this one night when all my family members were in their bedrooms doing their own things. It was already late out and I was getting ready to go to sleep when there was a loud splat that sounded like it came from the master bedroom. I thought someone might have dropped the shampoo bottle in the bathtub while taking a shower and thought nothing more. I was more concerned when my brother came into my bedroom and asked me if I heard the noise. I told him that somebody probably dropped the shampoo bottle in the master bedroom. I gave him a confused look when he told me that everyone heard it coming from the kitchen, which was just right outside my bedroom door. I wanted to prove him wrong and checked out the master bedroom. The bathtub was dried and nobody was in that bedroom. My parents had been out for the night, which I had totally forgot about. Together, all my brothers and sisters went to check the kitchen, but everything was normal, nothing on the floor. And we all heard it coming from different sections of the house, and the loud splat came from inside the house. Now, just remembering that noise, it sounded like a huge piece of meat falling from a distant height and splatting on the tile floor. Nobody wanted to sleep in their own rooms that night. Oh yeah, one thing, my parents' rental home was built on the same lot where a house was burnt down. We would find some spoons and forks on the backyard while helping my parents till the ground. Another time, in the same house, my wife and I were getting ready to go to sleep. My baby brother wanted to sleep with us that night, so my wife and him were still up. I was trying to go to sleep, but they were talking and playing games. All of a sudden, my brother stopped and was staring out the window. I heard my wife ask him, "What's wrong?" He didn't say anything, and then I heard him say, "The eye." My eyes popped wide open and I held my breath for the longest time. Then my wife asked me, "Honey, did you hear what your brother said?" I didn't answer as I was scared stiff, and then all of a sudden I jumped out of bed and bolted for the door. I ran outside to the living room where half of my family members were still up and watching TV. My wife and brother came in after me, and my brother was all scared. You could tell it on his face. After a while, when we finally got over it a little bit, we went to sleep, but my baby brother didn't sleep with us that night. I assumed that what he saw that night must have been an eyeball peeking through the window. Wow, what a brave older brother you are. This one is an American ghost story. It has to be real because it has been told by many eyewitnesses, and the media has a story about it in one of their ghost story hunting shows or whatever it was. All I know is that the street is called White in San Jose. I drove on that street before. The story that was told was that people were pulled over by a motorcycle cop. They were given a speeding ticket, but when they would go and pay for the ticket, the court clerk would say that the officer had died on that street years ago. There's also a real murder case on Marsh Road. One day, a man killed his girlfriend and threw her under a bridge. Every year around Halloween, many kids in the area would drive up on that one narrow road called Marsh Road to hang out. I've been on that road 2 times for scares, and we actually went to that very bridge. At a distance, you could tell that there is a barn house, and at the bottom of the small wooden bridge is where they found her body. A friend of mine went there one time onto this road that is out in the wooded area. It's only big enough for 1 car at a time. They were being tailgated by a semi-truck, and when the driver looked back, he said that he saw an orange semi-truck. The truck was trying to run them off the road, so all the people in the car were scared. When they went off the road, the truck turned off its lights and it somehow vanished. The following day, the driver of that car took a camera shot of the fender bender accident, and you can clearly see an orange mark on his car. They also say that Marsh Road is supposedly haunted by albino people who live there. Since it's a popular place, people or kids who go often up there would see what they describe as albino people. This happened to me in summer of 2007, after I moved back to my parents after being done with college. Ever since I moved back, I have been sleeping in the living room. It was late at night and way past midnight. I was just about to go to sleep when I heard an old lady calling my name. The first time it wasn't very clear, so I didn't think much of it. I shrugged it off and I was on my way back to sleep again. Then a couple of minutes passed by and I heard that same voice calling my name. Again, I turned to the kitchen and I looked and didn't see anybody. So I told myself that it was probably just my mom calling me. So I waited to see if she would walk down the hallway and turn on the lights and yell at me. A couple of minutes passed by and I didn't see my mom. Then I heard the voice calling my name, this time very loud and clear, 2 times. Whatever it was calling my name from the kitchen. So I got a little curious and wanted to check it out myself. I got up and turned on the lights in the kitchen and went in there. I didn't see anybody. Then I turned on the lights in the hallway and checked all the doors. They were all closed shut and the room to my parents' room was locked, so I shrugged it off. I didn't think of it much and went to sleep. The next morning, I told my mom about this. She told me that it could be the people that used to live in this house that burnt down. She had her own experiences with these spirits that were killed in the house fire. The weird thing is that the people that died in that house were 2 males, but for some reason, I heard the voice of an old lady. My grandma and grandpa used to live in 2 separate places because they couldn't get along. My grandpa is a pimp and goes to the casino a lot. This happened when I was still in 4th or 5th grade. We used to visit them a lot in the summer. It was my uncle who told me this story. My grandma is a devout Christian. Her and my aunties, who are just a little older than me, lived in a house which was fine, but my grandpa lived in an apartment about a block away. My uncle was telling me that he was at my grandpa's place upstairs talking on the phone and watching TV. All of a sudden, the power goes out and the phone does as well. So he goes downstairs to check it out and all of a sudden, the boombox starts playing by itself. It sounded like a woman was talking in a sad voice on a staticky radio station. This was confusing because the power is out and he went to check. The boombox was not plugged in. After he realized what was happening, he booked it out of there. I was laughing at this point because he told me that he ran so fast he only put on one sandal at the time. He came back with his sisters later, and there was a dead cat at the foot of the doorstep. The story goes is that apartment is haunted by the spirit of a black lady who had committed suicide there. That was the reason why the rent was so cheap. My aunties told me that they would hear somebody walking around and turning on and off the lights at night. Here's a couple of personal stories that I have for myself. The first was when I was young. My brother and I shared the same room. We had beds next to each other, and mine was along the wall and his was more in the middle with a path in between our beds. The alarm clock was between our beds on a little stand. It was the type that was both a CD player and a radio and a clock built in. My brother told me recently that the reason why he needs absolute quiet when he's sleeping is because when we were kids, he used to hear the buttons on the radio being pressed. This would keep him up all night, but he never said anything about it. Personally, I've also heard the clicks on the radio, but I never thought about it being a supernatural phenomenon. The second story was when I was at my part-time job while in high school, working at Rite Aid. We had this super strict, bipolar, angry, perverted manager who always used to put me on closing. They always needed at least one guy to close for safety purposes. At the end of the day, the other two workers took out the money drawers to the back while I cleaned up around the ice cream place and cleaned the aisles. That night, when I was wiping down the front of the store, I heard what sounded like a man's voice shout. This shout from the man came from inside the closed store. I got goosebumps and was confused. We're closed, so did I miss somebody that was hiding in here? I walked throughout the entire store and didn't see anybody. I told the supervisor and she told me that about 8 years back, we had a pharmacist passed away who worked at the store. She said for 2 years afterwards, when you're closing the store, weird stuff would happen all the time. She said that one night she was cleaning up the toy aisle when all the toys turned on. The wind-up toys, the dolls that make noises, everything. She said out loud, "Fred, you're scaring me, stop it." And the toys went back to normal. My girlfriend's cousin lives up in Oregon and told me this story. She was sleeping in the living room one night, and she has this habit where she keeps the TV on and plays the movie Shrek all night. Kind of strange, but when the movie stops, she would automatically wake up and restart the movie. She said it was around 5 a.m. when Shrek stopped playing again, and she woke up, but this time, since it was already almost sunrise, she just turned off the TV. She went to the couch and put the blankets over her head, but she heard the closet door open very slowly. Then she heard two people talking, saying, "Do you think she's asleep now? Go check." When she looked, one of the figures came out and stood over her, waving its hand. She could only see their shapes through the blanket. Then she heard the one in the closet say, "Let's go." And they both went over to the front door, opened it, and left. Her brother works at the airport at 3 a.m., and when he came home for lunch, she asked him if he locked the door. He says that he always locks the door. Well, that morning, she found the door unlocked after whatever it was left. The other thing is that she said that because it was near New Year's, their mom had pulled out a lot of old Hmong clothes from the closet and left a lot of plastic bags laying around. She didn't hear anybody step on the plastic bags at all. My cousin or best friend who now lives away from me told me about seeing these ghosts or spirits on the side of the road. He said that the first time he saw one was when the family was heading to Fresno. If you guys know the 101 freeway going north from LA after passing Santa Barbara, there's really no more big cities. There comes to a place where the 101 goes inland from the ocean and you have to go through a small tunnel to get through the mountains. He said right before the tunnel, on the center divider area, he saw a lady wearing red with no face. He saw it really quickly, and then his grandma shoved his face down and told him to not look at it. The next time he saw one, he was also going to Fresno, just past Lemoore. You know the area just south of the city where there's a lot of orchards? He said he was looking behind the car and he saw a lady in white walk across the freeway, and no car saw her or hit her. She walked into the orchards until he couldn't see her again. That was some stories from my cousin, but I have some more from my family. My aunt's in-laws' brother and sisters have a kind of weird situation. You see, their mom is a very powerful shaman who is blessed with some many great gifts and powers, but at the cost that she draws a lot of spiritual energy. The situation is this: although she has tried to become Christian and accepts the teachings of Jesus and loves God, there are some things that she cannot get rid of. The best part is though that she is a super strong woman who is not afraid of anything. However, her kids aren't so brave. They told me about one of their houses out by a cemetery in Fresno. The house itself is not that bad, but it's one particular room that everyone just has bad vibes in. My aunt got sat on a couple of times in that room. One of my uncles was asleep on the bed, and he saw an old lady come into the room and go into the closet. But the scariest one is the youngest of the kids, who is now joining the Marines, told me that when they were playing hide and seek, he didn't even make it into that room. The door was just kind of open, but he felt something in that room. He looked in, and 5 feet away from him was a lady in white, brushing her long black hair. Then she quickly turned to look at him. This freaked him out and he ran off screaming. They didn't play hide and seek the rest of that night. I have a friend who played football with me in high school. We were in class at the beginning of this last semester when he told me about the theater that he works in. He lives in a small town about 45 minutes away from the college. The theater is one of the oldest buildings in the town, and it used to be the one for plays and stuff, but now it's used for movies. He says that they've heard and seen a lot of things that scared even him. And keep in mind, he's a 300-pound white guy, mostly made of muscle. He said that one night he was working and an old man came in to watch a movie. They told him which theater it was in and he went in there. Because it's an old theater, the front entrance is the only entrance and exit, so when they didn't see him come out, they went in to look for him and didn't find anybody. When they asked some of the other teenagers who were working and still wandering around, they said that they remember seeing him come in and sit near the back, but didn't pay attention to as when he disappeared. His buddy, one of the night crews who cleans up the place, was recently fired because he was too superstitious. He would leave trails of salt at the doorways to make a barrier. This was so spirits couldn't come into the same room as he was when he was cleaning. Seriously though, this worker would report to the managers that on some nights he would see a face outside the theater glass doors scream at him as he walked by. Not only this, him and my buddy have been in the little rooms behind the theater where the projectors are, and they have seen stuff move or fly off the shelves. They also would sometimes hear people talking in the empty theaters. Okay, I have one more story. I have an uncle who went swimming at a lake up in the Fresno area. They told me the name, but I forgot it. It was probably Lost Lake or something. The lake is very green colored and pretty murky. He was swimming and he said that he felt something grab his foot and pull hard. My uncle started to yell out and a lot of the other people got scared and got out of the water fast. He couldn't move that foot, so he couldn't swim, and now he was fearing for his life. Finally, one of the older uncles gets a branch and holds it out to him. My uncle gets a good grip on it and the other uncle pulls, but he feels something pull his leg back. It took about 3 or 4 people to finally get my uncle out of the water, and they said that when he did get free, it was like nothing was holding him at all. They took him back and had to call his spirit back at the same lake. There is a haunted lake in Fresno, California called Avocado Lake. It's got dark and green murky water. Back in the 90s, one of my little cousins drowned there. This was when the lake was still a hotspot for Hmong families because it wasn't so haunted yet. But now, Hmong folks don't go there anymore and it's full of Mexicans. Anyways, his family went for a picnic that summer day and everybody was swimming. Well, it was very fun splashing in the summer, so the OGs got distracted and didn't really watch the kids. When they decided that it was time to get out, they didn't see their son anywhere, so they ran around the whole park calling his name for half an hour before they finally decided to notify the lake people of a possible drowning. The swim team was full of divers and guys on jet skis searching the whole lake, but not a single hint of the boy. I mean, this went on for the whole day and not a single find. At sunset, they finally found the body washed up on a rock. The body was bloated from gulping water and there was 2 fang marks on his neck. Since he drowned, his body was stinking and rotting at the funeral, so they had to close the casket. Everyone was scared and they went home because his eyes were bulging out and he was rotting away. My parents felt bad and helped comfort their family by staying the night. I mean, everyone was gone except about 2 families and my parents. Well, my mom happened to pass by his coffin when one of the family members opened it. My mom saw his eyes bulging out and it scared the crap out of her. She came home and had nightmares about seeing those bulging, rotten eyes, so they had to do Jingle Bell for my mom. He was also my blood cousin's best friend in elementary. My cousin had a dream that week that he woke up from his coffin and went to cry to his mom. He got freaked out and told his sister about it the next day. She didn't believe him, but that night, she had the same exact dream. She went to tell her older sister the next day and she also didn't believe her, so that night, the older sister also had the same exact dream. Well, his family members kept on having dreams about him, showing them about how he died. In the dreams, he would always show them that he got pulled underwater by a hand, and then some Hmong people took his body and replaced it with a log. The elders say that when a drowned person is recovered and if there are fang-like marks on the neck area, it is because of a ja, or a dragon spirit. The reason for him being bloated and having the decaying smell is because it is not his body. The elders say that when a drowned person's body has been replaced, it decays a lot faster than normal. There was a story that was told by some OG on those conference calls. He was telling about when back in Laos, he and this other Hmong kid, along with 3 Laotian kids, went down a cave-like hole. They went down so far that they couldn't see light and they couldn't get up anymore due to the steepness of the hole. I can't recall much of what he said, but he said that the reason why he and this other Hmong kid were alive was because they knew that when there's a hole with wind blowing out of it deep in another hole, it must mean that there's a ja. The 3 Laotian kids died because they went into that hole and never came back. After the Hmong kids were found and rescued, the parents of the 3 Laotian kids asked where their kids went, and the Hmong kids told them about what happened and the hole that they traveled. After hearing this, the Laotian parents went and got a powerful monk, and the monk was able to communicate with the dragon. The dragon told the monk that it wasn't the dragon's fault as the 3 kids went to the dragon's den on their own, and the dragon was minding its own business. Food came along by itself, and that's why he took the children. The monk wanted to know what the dragon did to the body, and the dragon said that he could show them, but when they see it, they can't do anything to the bodies or the dragon. The monk asked the parents and they all agreed and made a deal. The dragon told them that there is a small pond on the rice paddy field and that is where the 3 bodies were. Weirdly enough, the guy that owns the rice paddy never ran out of water from this pond and he always had plenty of water even during the years of drought. They went to the location the dragon had pointed out and drained the pond. At the bottom of the pond were the 3 bodies of the boys. They all looked like they had just fallen asleep and nothing had happened, but once the parents pulled out the kids and a couple of minutes passed by, the bodies started to decay rapidly and the facial expressions of the boys started to show. After that, they did their funerals and people were forbidden from entering that hole. This happened when I was about 10 or 11 years old in Marysville, California. I went to my friend's house, which was about 4 houses down, and we were playing house, making mud pie and all. As we were gathering up dirt for making a hill out of it so we could make our mud pie, I saw a ring. Now, that ring is those kind of rings that old folks wear for good luck. It has a brown stone on top. I put the ring in my pocket and told my friends that I have to go home because it's getting dark. When I got home, I went to the backyard and hid the ring and then put a rock on top of it to mark the spot. The place that I hid the ring is right below our bedroom window. Our sleeping arrangement is that we have our heads facing the wall to the backyard. That night, I woke up to a scratch from outside the wall above the area where I hid the ring. I felt sick to my stomach for some reason and threw up. Then after that, I went back to sleep. On the second night, the same thing happened again. I woke up to another scratch on the wall and again I threw up. On the third night, instead of scratches on the wall, I woke up to a loud noise like someone starting up an old car, and then I peeked outside. When I first peeked out, I saw a huge blue light flashing around our backyard like it's looking for something. Then, all of a sudden, the lights went out, and a UFO with lights going around the object started flying up higher and higher into the dark night sky. Morning came and I went to check on the ring to make sure that it's still in the same place after 3 days. To my surprise, someone moved the rock that I placed to mark the ring. I dug all the holes around that area, but no ring was to be found. Years later, my dad and my brother took down the chicken coop because we were moving elsewhere, and under the chicken coop is where I saw the same ring.